Hello and welcome to another video in our Testing Tuesday series. Following on with our DevOps theme, this week we're talking all about tips to start continuous testing. In our last two videos we talked about DevOps and types of DevOps practices, so if you haven't seen those, go back and watch that. But the first tip for starting continuous testing is pairing up. So what this means is taking a tester and taking a developer and pairing them together and closing that feedback loop. So examples of that feedback could be the developer is going to tell the tester what part of the source code they're working on and how that can relate back to a user story. And then the tester can tell the developer how we're going to automate that or what parts we're going to automate. So you're kind of closing that feedback loop. The next off of that is what we call the pizza method. So this is something that Amazon Web Services do, and it continues on from the pairing up. But the problem with communication is, as your team gets bigger, there can be a communication breakdown because there's more people involved. So how big do you set your teams up? So what we say is actually, you set your team up big enough that 2 pizzas will happily fill everyone in that team. So having a team of 20 isn't going to work because 2 pizzas is not going to feed a team of 20. So you might have maybe a team of 4 or 6, something like that, 4, 5, 6, and 2 pizzas will probably comfortably feed that many people in that team. Now, there is a problem with this, and that's if you have someone like me on your team who will happily eat an entire pizza, that's probably not going to work, but you get the idea. Next, moving on to automate first. So this doesn't mean eliminating your manual testing. In fact, it is near enough impossible to eliminate your manual testing. You will have to still test manually with such as exploratory testing. You cannot automate exploratory testing. It's very difficult to do so. But the idea is that you take an automated first approach. The next tip is think small. So if you think along a waterfall development process, you have these big month blocks where work gets done but there's no results and nothing's happening in terms of a product. So as Agile teaches and DevOps, you break things down into smaller chunks, into smaller pieces of work. So you test those smaller and release those quicker. And we talked about this last time, but you break everything down into smaller chunks. And the last tip is actually sort of get smart. So this is to do with metrics. So you might have an alert that goes out to your developers, for example, that tells them when a manual or an automated test has failed and what they can do about that. You might even set up triggers that can trigger pull requests, that kind of thing. And this really also helps when integrating to Jira. So if you're using Jira for user story and bug tracking, metrics can come into play even more. So don't underestimate metrics. Doesn't matter how small or big your team is, they can play a huge part in speeding up your coding and testing and whole life cycle. So thank you for watching this video on tips to continuous testing, and we'll see you next time.